especially when you look at a place like Cincinnati, and I think we're a great example of this, right? It's more of a white collar industry, right? Like you were saying, like software engineers relative to most workers get paid extremely well, right? And on the other side of things, you've got these essential industries for both for workers and their communities, right? There's a home cleaning co-op that is absolutely wonderful, Cincy Cleaning Co-op. There's Our Harvest, the farm. And so a lot of what we do, right, is, the co-op network as a whole gets stronger if we lift each other up, right? And so that's where the profit sharing comes from. And in terms of a little bit more nuts and bolts, so Co-op Cincy, the organization itself is a nonprofit, right? And for years, that's all it was a bunch of co-ops supported by Co-op Cincy with this profit sharing agreement. But actually last year, and I can't really take any credit for this, we came on 99% through the process and just get to, reap the rewards of it. But we're actually started a for-profit, like a proper co-op of co-ops, Mondragon style. And so it's, and so that,
so is this like everybody agrees to put in a certain percentage of their net and then it gets redistributed to everybody on like the basis of hours worked, or how does that?
So it's not a pure profit share in that way. So half of the profit goes to Co-op Cincy, the nonprofit. And speaking from experience, you get that back as a multiple in terms of support and grant access. But the other half of that 10%, so 5%, goes to this co-op of co-ops. And that, we're really in our first full year of it. And so it'll be interesting to see where that money goes. We're looking at real estate acquisitions, right, to get office space so that, eliminate one landlords are highly risky for small businesses. And their viability, but also things like, group healthcare coverage. Why are each of us paying for 1/10 of a lawyer when 10 of us can pay for one lawyer, right? Things like shared services purchasing. Exactly. Cool.
All right. So I am here with Andy Bowling, and he is going to tell us about his worker cooperative. I'll just let you take it away from there, Andy.
Sure. Yeah. I'm Andy. I'm a software engineer and co-founder of Comp.coop. So we started in early 2024. So we're just over a year old. And our goal, in one sentence, is we aim to bring world-class tech to worker-led organizations. So that means nearly 100% of our clients are co-ops, ESOPs, co-op developers, trade unions, folks who we ask the question, if this client succeeds, are workers in their communities better off? And so, that's really the one sentence summary. And then in terms of what that actually means, right? Because tech is a endlessly large space. We really focus in on software, and we offer a really wide range of services. On the high end, we came from a background of tech startups, of big tech, of consulting, and building these really global scale platforms. If you think of in the co-op space, things like the Drivers Co-op, right, is sort of the North Star example of a large platform co-op. But we meet the space where it's at. Our most popular package is what we call our Solidarity Starter package. It's usually for new or rebranding co-ops, ones who just went through incubation, and you essentially get a beautiful, simple website, a custom social media strategy that helps you, achieve success on social media with a minimal amount of work. We set you up with basic cybersecurity. It's just everything that we say, the lower tech 95% of businesses need to be successful in their first, 2 to 4 years. And then everything in between, your QuickBooks doesn't talk to your Airtable. We do that. You want a CRM setup. That's It's a little bit of a overview. I never know whether to do the 2-minute version or the 2-hour version of the company overview.
Yeah, so there was a lot of stuff on there. I've got a couple of questions for you. One, just who are some of your clients that you're working with there?
Yeah. So custom tech takes a long time to get off the ground. The one thing I'm really happy I read before we started this is for an established firm that does custom tech, the sales cycle is 6 to 9 months long. So that means, from the time you talk to someone to when they agree to work with you. So we really started taking it seriously in January of 24. We got our first client in June, and now we have 19 clients, 17 of whom are co-ops or co-op developers. And it's everything from, I'll start with our largest example. We work with Works Printing, who they do, I always say if you've been in the co-op or nonprofit space for enough years, you have a couple of their items. They do print on demand merch, but they are a union print shop. They're a worker cooperative themselves. And they do, larger projects, like they do the merch for Elizabeth Warren, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, but then they also are really focused on smaller nonprofits, co-ops, trade unions, and left-leaning politicians. We've done a lot of work for them in terms of modernizing their tech, helping them open up new lines of business, lowering their operational costs, sort of being in a sense, a large part of their tech department. And then we also have a lot of, to go to the other extreme, brand new co-ops, folks who maybe you haven't even heard of yet that are still in incubation, still silent. One that I'll highlight that's in Co-op Cincy that is doing really well now in their first full year of operation. They're called Old Growth Cooperative. They do regenerative landscaping, so like sustainable landscaping. And they're founded by folks who have been around the co-op scene for a lot of years in Cincinnati. And for them, it was a lot simpler, right? It's a beautiful website. You can see them at oldgrowth.coop. And, a social media strategy, web security, helping them just, these guys are busy, right? They're landscaping ideally all the time, right? And so we want to make it the tech part of the business, which isn't why they're doing it, as easy as possible. I'd say those are two extreme examples.
Yeah, I saw on your website, you've got listed as one of your services offered startup assistance. And I wondered if that was beyond just the kind of the basic technical stuff to get off the ground, or if you guys were doing some other kind of startup consulting or advising. Or
so we are definitely, if you talk to me in 3 months, I might say yes, we do everything. We're really looking at that of like, we're working backwards from the question of like, what does it take to grow the movement? What does it take to really encourage worker ownership, from our angle of expertise, which is generally digital. So one thing we started doing in the second half of last year is we partnered with co-op developers in Ohio and then also in Colorado. And we're talking with a few others this year to take their incubation classes. So, a lot of these folks have 12 or 16 week, Co-op Cincy calls it Co-op U, where, you work through a 200-page workbook, right? And we've started coming in about 2/3 of the way through that. Once you have your customers figured out, once you have your sales strategy, and it is it's a decent amount of tech. We basically give like a 30 to 45 minute education presentation, which the first half of which is done by my teammate, Anna, who's a marketing expert. And so she'll talk about, have a logo that can look good in tiny formats, that can look good on black paper, on white paper, that can look good, that just sort of basics around how to create a brand that is authentic, but also practical. Finding your voice, people are practicing their customer pitches. How do you take that into marketing materials, right? And then I come in and do my little thing about, here's how you build a successful website. Here's how you think about tech investments. But we are looking more into broader business consulting, but it's still, still in the works.
Yeah. I mean, if you decide to go that direction, Cooperation Works, their course for developers is highly recommended by everyone. But yeah, so it sounds like then you're doing right now that kind of startup assistance stuff in conjunction with Co-op Cincy.
Yeah.
As like part of their program, right? Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. So they ran along with 3 other co-op developers in Ohio, Co-op Dayton, Co-op Columbus, and Cleveland Owns. They ran a statewide Co-op U last year, a digital one, and it was somewhere around a dozen co-ops. And so yeah, we helped all of them out.
Great.
Yeah.
So another thing I saw on your website, on just kind of your creation story there with the 3 of you starting, and it sounds like you've got quite a few people on board now working there. I was wondering, is it still just the 3 of you as worker owners, or have you onboarded more people onto the ownership track, I guess?
Great question. I'll give sort of a two-part answer here. So the first is, for us as a pure organization, we're looking at a 4th person, but currently we're still 3 worker owners. But one thing that I'm really excited for, that we're actually getting everyone together on Friday for the first time, but we've been working on this for 15 months, is, we've met dozens and dozens of values-aligned tech professionals in the last year at conferences, through networking, through friends, through the community. And we've really identified a dozen across 4 other co-ops that we think meet this combination of being really, really good at what they do, having a sort of unique skill set that complements the rest of the group, and are values aligned and understand co-op economics. And so we now, and we've run this on jobs with 2 clients successfully already, where we can sort of come in and say, hey, think of us as one big engineering and product department. And that's everything from paid social media advertising, that's Cotty Collective up in Toledo. There's Limeleaf Worker Collective up in Albany, who does a lot of like low level, Go and Rust and network engineering stuff. We've got Polycot Associates out. Actually, they're spread all over, who do a lot of large scale web development. And then Solidarity Co-op, solid.coop is their website. They do a lot of functional programming and backend development. So we do have projects where we can present ourselves as a very large team that's tightly connected. But, for us as a legal entity, we're 3 worker owners, soon to be 4.
Okay, cool. That's, of course, I mean, you're only a year old. I guess I didn't really realize how new you were, and you got a lot of clients within that year. But, there are a lot of worker co-ops where the probationary period for new employees is a year plus, sometimes longer than that. So, okay, that's great. So I don't know what else to ask you about comp.coop. So what should I be asking you? And just ask yourself a question if you have another one that you wished I would ask, and then answer it for me.
I think the biggest thing that we're really starting to crack, one thing we've really looked at is, particularly in the United States, why to this point these very large scale industry wide high tech cooperative efforts haven't really hit their revenue goals. Right. You look at, the famous one is the drivers co-op for, Uber drivers owning their own app. There's also, a really exciting one, Subvert, that's coming up, that is a musician and musician label owned alternative to Bandcamp, the Artisans Co-op for Etsy, right? Like there's a lot of these popping up, in their business models. What we've seen, volunteering at these co-ops, having some of them as clients, or just studying them and talking to their founders, right, is they, it really feels like in the last 5 to 10 years, and again, I'm saying this is someone who's relatively new to the space. This is folks I'm talking to that I'm learning this from, but we've really kind of cracked the business side of it pretty well. The economics of it, how you organize, how the legal entities work, how decision-making works, I feel like has really come a long way. But when you talk to the folks who have led from the tech side of this, even 4 or 5 years ago, it really seemed like the tech side of the scene was very disconnected. And, these teams would come together for a project. And if you think about being a software engineer, the world we've grown up in the last 20, 30 years is with venture capital funny money, right? Where these venture capitalists, most of the I always say, the only company I've ever worked for that is bigger now than when I worked there is my dad's small manufacturing company up in Akron.
Right.
Every other one, from 4-person startups to 180,000 person behemoths, are smaller than when I worked there, right? And that's because these guys don't really care about sustainability, solid business principles, right? They want a lottery ticket.
Which is why you can't just take their business model and try to make it a co-op, because they have SoftBank and they have, people with billions of dollars of dumb money that they'll throw down this black hole. Like, we don't have that, right? So
you're exactly right. And so from day one, and this was even 6 months before we started the company, so like mid 23, we really started thinking about, like, how do we crack that, right? And one of the things we're looking at is, how did Mondragon crack it, right? Biggest co-op success story, one of the biggest ones in the world, right? And
have your own bank. Yeah.
That's exactly it. Yeah. And so, the way that their problem back in the 1960s, right, was they had all these great ideas, but they didn't have that early stage business coaching, and they didn't have startup capital, right? And the bank solved, in a lot of ways, both of those problems, right? And if you think about what these big platform co-op efforts or these high-tech co-op efforts are raising money for, oftentimes, like, a great majority of it is for tech labor, right? And so if we can come in here and say, hey, we will engage in that risk sharing, right? We'll take some risk with you. We believe that this business long-term is viable, and and it's essentially labor debt that we need to go into. And we've really looked at that, and we've already, just by thinking that way, we have been able to quote, 10 to 20% off the sticker price for high-end software development, right? Which is good, but we kind of want to go further, right? We really want to, get something that's affordable to these movements that don't have $1 billion behind them.
Minson G, who you probably know,
Love
she just
Minson.
wrote an article in Nonprofit Quarterly about their kind of experience so far with their kind of Denver iteration of the drivers co-op idea. And one number that stuck out to me was the $500,000 that they had spent developing the app, which is like, for in the worker co-op world, not in the tech world, not in the, but in the worker co-op world, $500,000 is a massive amount of money.
So much money.
Right. And and as you say, most of that money is just going to highly skilled tech workers. And so, some of us get kind of concerned about that, that, there's going to be a bunch of money raised to do co-op stuff, but then it's going to end up going to people who are basically freelancers who are already making 6-figure salaries other places. And then if the co-op doesn't work out, the low income people who are supposed to benefit didn't benefit, and people who always benefit once again. Like, guys, the people on your end of things being willing to share some of that risk is great. I've been a big advocate of us needing, as a co-op movement, to do more risk sharing, because it's one thing, it's very easy to encourage somebody else to start a worker co-op or, a business of any kind. But once you've done that yourself, you understand there's a lot of risk involved, and even, worker co-ops have a much better survival rate than other businesses, but it's not a no risk proposition. And so, asking people who are already working in low income jobs, driving cabs or doing home healthcare or house cleaning, stuff like that, to also take on this kind of, risk and is all on their own, I think is a little much. So that's great that you guys are doing that. It's well, I don't know. Do I have anything else there? So those are, like I said, that's all the questions I can think of for now. I did want to spend some time talking with you a little bit about your experience with Co-op Cincy.
Absolutely.
And just kind of give us maybe a little background on the group as you know it, and just and what your interactions and have been with them.
Yeah, absolutely. So Co-op Cincy has been absolutely amazing. I mean, other than, I always credit the labor that goes into a thing as the biggest factor in its success, right? But short of that, Co-op Cincy has been the number one difference between success and failure for us. And when we started, we're a distributed team, right? I'm based in Northern Kentucky. I can walk to Cincinnati from my house, but one of my co-founders was in Brooklyn, so in the New York tri-state, and another was on the Florida-Georgia line outside of Tallahassee. And so we really had not just different metros, but we had, 8 or 9 different states where we reasonably could have called home. And we met a lot of folks. We looked around, and what we found with Co-op Cincy is they really balance the theoretical, what does this movement need to look like in 10, 20, 40 years with the, how do we survive until tomorrow? And those are really my favorite folks to work with in the space. They were founded, I think around, I'll mess up the history here, but about 15 years ago with a historic partnership with Mondragon and the United Steelworkers Union, to really try and replicate the Mondragon model in a way that made sense in the United States. And now in 2025, there are about 15 active co-ops in the network, doing everything from farming to landscaping, like I mentioned, to solar energy, massage therapy. And yeah, we're pretty tightly integrated. We do profit sharing throughout the network. We get together once a month for a happy hour. We have, fundraising events each year. We, provide discounted services to each other in the spirit of inter-cooperation. Actually, the wall behind me was insulated by Sustainergy, who does residential solar and home insulation. And it's just really, the level of reputation that they've built as leaders in the space, the level of just, you can come to them with any problem and they'll say, okay, here's 5 people who have thought about this for years, and here's what you can learn from them, and we'll connect you to them. Has just been, the difference is just been unreal to describe the support they've given us.
Yeah, that's great to hear. One of the things you just said that really surprised me, and I want you to expand on some more, is the profit sharing aspect. You said that the co-ops in the network are doing profit sharing. What's that look like in practice? Yeah.
So especially when you look at a place like Cincinnati, and I think we're a great example of this, right, as more of a white collar industry, right? Like you were saying, software engineers relative to most workers get paid extremely well, right? And on the other side of things, you've got these essential industries for both for workers and their communities, right? There's a home cleaning co-op that is absolutely wonderful, Cincy Cleaning Co-op. There's Our Harvest, the farm. And so a lot of what we do, right, is, the co-op network as a whole gets stronger if we lift each other up, right? And so that's where the profit sharing comes from. And in terms of a little bit more nuts and bolts, so Co-op Cincy, the organization itself is a nonprofit, right? And for years, that's all it was a bunch of co-ops supported by Co-op Cincy with this profit sharing agreement. But actually last year, and I can't really take any credit for this, we came on 99% through the process and just get to, reap the rewards of it. But we're actually started a for-profit, like a proper co-op of co-ops, Mondragon style. And so it's, and so that,
so is this like everybody agrees to put in a certain percentage of their net, and then it gets redistributed to everybody on like the basis of hours worked, or how does that?
So it's not a pure profit share in that way. Half of the profit goes to Co-op Cincy, the nonprofit. And speaking from experience, you get that back as a multiple in terms of support and grant access. But the other half of that 10%, so 5%, goes to this co-op of co-ops. And that, we're really in our first full year of it. And so it'll be interesting to see where that money goes. We're looking at real estate acquisitions, right, to get office space so that, eliminate one land. Landlords are highly risky for small businesses. And their viability, but also things like, group healthcare coverage. Why are each of us paying for 1/10 of a lawyer when 10 of us could pay for one lawyer, right?
Right.
Things like shared services purchasing.
Legal,
Exactly. Where we're going to go with that is still to be seen, but it's exciting. All those structures are in place now for it.
That's great. Have you guys considered or do you already have maybe a revolving loan fund for the co-ops, maybe as part of your profit sharing, or have you thought about doing that with part of that?
So I know Co-op Cincy is part of, and I believe Kristen Barker, the co-director of Co-op Cincy, is on the board for Seed Commons. And so I know that they have a lot of those same principles, right, of non-extractive capital infusions. And so I know different co-ops in the network have leaned into that network. But that's definitely one exciting thing that's quite related to that, right, is a big, correctly, an obsession in the space right now is the silver tsunami, right? All of these small businesses owned by baby boomers who are retiring, and we want them to go work around. Right. And so a lot of what we're looking at is, if workers want to buy out a business, there's really two limitations. There's immediate capital and there's expertise, management expertise specifically. Right. And so one thing we're looking at is, hey, could we acquire these businesses to give the owner a, faster way to get capital and then just sell it back to the workers at cost. Right. To basically provide that, super low interest loan functionally. And then also management training. If they need a finance person for a year, provide a finance person for a year. So that is in the works, but it's still, a pretty new initiative.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's, you're not the first people to have that idea or that, that basic idea. And, the silver tsunami, I've been kind of, I guess, in the movement, as it were, for about 10, 11 years. And I think the whole time I've been here, people have been talking about the silver tsunami. And yeah, it's, the longer, time goes on, it keeps being true. So, but, but on the profit share. I guess I was going to say, it's that kind of co-op holding company idea. I think is definitely one that could have some legs, because that's certainly an issue for a number of people. I've run into it myself, where we're talking about turning this privately owned thing into cooperativizing it, and then there's a health issue that comes up, and things need to get settled real quickly now, and we don't have time to do all that. And it would be great to have something along those lines. I would just say, and from long experience now with a lot of very experienced co-op developers and talking to people who've done a lot of conversions, it's the educating the workers about how to run the business and how to work together to do that is the lion's share. If you've already got a profitable business, a lot of that stuff is fortunately, I guess the businessy side of it is has already been figured out largely, hopefully, but there's all that kind of education work that goes on. So yeah, that's good. Hopefully you guys can figure something else out or figure something out with that. But yeah, the other thing that is just because we have a good relationship with VOC and the Valley Alliance of Worker Cooperatives, and that's one of the big things that their alliance has done that's been very helpful for the members is the Intercooperative Loan Fund, where they all contribute to a revolving loan fund, and then it's there for emergencies and stuff when they can't get necessarily the shared capital or seed commons funds, or often just in conjunction with those as well, another source of financing for larger stuff. So do you know how maybe you already mentioned it, but do you know about how many members are in Co-op Cincy?
So it is, in terms of active co-ops, I think there are 15, maybe 16 of us now. And in terms of total members, I know it's well into the hundreds. Oh man, I'm a little embarrassed. I don't know the exact number. I'm actually looking on the website now. Here, I will. I'd say between two and I think it's between like 200 and 500 if I had to guess.
Okay. Yeah. So 15, 16 co-ops. That's about what we'd expect. And doing trainings for 1,300 people a year. That's great. Cool. So anything else exciting that Co-op Cincy has been up to that you'd like to talk about or share, or just anything in that area that you're...
Oh man, so many things. How to choose? I'll plug one thing that I'm really excited about. They've partnered with the other co-op networks in Ohio and are working on. They have it scheduled a Ohio statewide co-op tour. So it's a bus tour that's going to be in 3 days in. Let me look it up. Early June. I think it's June 5th through 7th. I could be off by a day there. But essentially it starts up in Cleveland. So we'll tour some of the Cleveland-owned supported cooperatives. There's also Evergreen Cooperatives is a very large, hundreds of worker owners cooperative network up in Cleveland. Start up there, maybe go through the Ohio Employee Ownership Center in Kent, Ohio, just outside of Akron, down to Co-op Columbus, and then to Co-op Dayton. They've got a lot going on there. And then it ends back in Cincinnati for our annual Co-op Fest, which is out on our Harvest Farm. There's, fresh food, and all the co-ops will have a table there. Everyone else has a table there. I'm just really looking forward to that. I just love hanging with co-op people. It's always a good time.
Have you guys, do you have much interaction with the folks from Cleveland? And the co-ops there? Yeah.
We actually, like Comp.coop personally, we're very, very tight with, especially the folks up at Cleveland Owns. They do a lot of incredible work, not just in the co-op space, but they're a little bit, I would say, even more broad thinking. They're doing things like pushing for community solar laws in Ohio, right? Which is a way for people who don't own a giant rooftop to get access to the benefits of solar via shared purchasing. They do a lot with, community support, and also do, support some co-ops as well. Yeah, we love those guys, and I'm from outside of Cleveland, so personal connection there as well.
Nice. Yeah. Okay. Well, I am out of questions. Anytime anybody brings up Uber and Mondragon, I have like rants I can go off on for an hour on both of those, but I've already done it on many other occasions, so I'm not going to subject you to them. And they're probably not even relevant. But yeah, so it's, I don't know. Once again, I'm at the end of my questions for you, but I feel like you probably have more to share. But if you don't, just we can wrap it up. But if you've got something else that you'd like to talk about, or some, I don't know, maybe some something that you've noticed a lot of, if there's something that you notice co-ops are often lacking on in your particular field of expertise. Like I know here we've had some security issues due to social media, like we got our Facebook account hacked. I don't know. Is there any advice you can share, general advice that, from your training and stuff with people that might be helpful?
Yeah. I think something that, and this I would say generally applies, I've seen this at brand new theoretical small business manufacturing co-ops, and also like, high tech 100-person ones, is, with tech, there's sort of this joke in the industry that, junior engineers think of tech as this like positive thing. You build tech and it's valuable, it adds value, whereas senior engineers look at it as a cost center. Right. And I think that is really something I tell everyone that we talk to, is to, you talk to people about, paying taxes, for example. That's something you have to do as a business, right? If you want to exist and make revenue, you have to file your taxes. You don't have to have a website, but it's almost always a good idea, right? And the reason it's a good idea is because it's an investment in your business, right? Thinking of it that way is generally how I tell people to approach all tech things, right? If you're a food composting company and you're going to buy a truck that can pick up the composting bins and dump them and allows you to pick up twice as many bins and grow your business, you should evaluate tech investments the same way, right? How is it going to help you run away from the pains of your business, reduce operational costs, reduce labor costs so that you can focus on more interesting things? How is it going to help you grow? I think just looking at it that way, instead of just, tech being this scary thing that you have to throw X number of $1,000s at a year, has been a really helpful framework for us, just consulting with, again, all levels of clients. Would be my number one thing.
Okay. Well, that's good. It sparks for me because we've, started using over the years a lot of these kind of, I guess, software as a service, B2B SaaS or whatever they call it.
Digital landlords.
Yes. So, StreamYard that we're using now to record this is a service that we pay for monthly. We use Trent transcription, like automated transcription service that makes it possible for us to do a lot more transcriptions than we would otherwise. But that's also as a monthly fee. Our Zoom account, all this kind of stuff. And our MailChimp. Now MailChimp we got off of for our newsletter because they jacked the price up considerably at the same time they implemented a bunch of AI stuff we weren't real comfortable with. And so we did find a worker co-op, Autonomic, to work with and get us onto our own kind of self-hosted email system and actually get Google and Yahoo to deliver our emails and all that, which has saved us, will save us money. The setup, took a little bit, but the monthly rate going forward is a lot better and we're in full control of it. So I'm wondering, how do you feel about like the open source software? Do you guys recommend using any of that? I know one thing that we've done at Geo is recently gone from using, I don't even want to say what we're using for bookkeeping before, but we've started using new Cache, GNU Cache. It's the QuickBooks replacement, I think, made for Linux, but apparently you can get it on Windows and Apple too. So just wondering if you guys, use any of that software or recommend it or anything like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the way I think about things like that with tech is, you want to do as much as you can while keeping the mission successful, right? So for example, I'm not going to go out and like rip the fiber lines out and build my own democratically run fiber lines because that's not a feasible problem for me to personally solve, right? But so we look at, what are these layers that are the best bang for your buck in terms of taking them ethical? And I guess two thoughts. One sort of general concept is, when you're first starting out, the most common thing to do is run your entire business in a spreadsheet, right? You run it in Google Sheets or Excel, and that's great. That's most. I always say if you want. I
feel like we're being called out right now, but all right, go on.
It's funny. As a consultant, if you ask me, like, I have to ask one non-financial question to a business to determine if they're profitable, I would say, have you broken Excel by putting too many rows in it? Right. And if the answer is yes, you're doing everything right. But one thing I say is when you grow out of that phase, really look at putting your data somewhere where you have the cost control. So one example, a lot of folks use, things like HubSpot or Zoho to manage their marketing communications, or MailChimp, right? Some of those services have databases that they offer as well. And I always say, the source of truth for your data, move it to a server that you control, move it to an open source tool, move it to a tool where you can't have, like you described with MailChimp, one day they triple the price, because data in particular, the deeper you get into your tech stack, you've got the user interface, you've got the API, the database is the deepest part, and it is the hardest, the stickiest thing in your stack. So as you grow, the best way to cost control, the best way to plan for the future is to focus on the data first. And then more specifically, with open source, open source definitely protects you, right? If MailChimp were open source and they 10x their price on you, you had another option where you could just self-host it, right? And that still has some cost and some overhead, but it would have been a lot less disruptive than what you had to go to, right? So now being on an open source solution or being on something that you own, you're just protected more, right? I've got a lot of thoughts on open source, but I guess one other one I'll say is, open source is a critical. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, it's kind of a yes and no thing is what I wanted to get, because on with the mail, specifically the email, it was great, that we had control over everything, and we knew that we weren't being used for training AI or whatnot.
Right.
But then Google and Yahoo made some changes that, all of a sudden our emails weren't being delivered, and we had to go make a bunch of DNS changes and all this stuff. And it took a long time. And we talked to several experts who were all like, you're doing everything right, and we don't know why it's still not going through. And it really seemed to me like Google and Yahoo want anybody doing mass mailing. They don't want you self-hosting, right? They want you using MailChimp kind of thing. So I feel like there's these kind of trade-offs that you do just kind of have to take into account. It's like, okay, you might have to spend some more time and money doing, technical stuff on your website if you want to get away from MailChimp and kind of being able to balance it out. So I don't know what the right solution is. I'm not a purist by any means, but I definitely try to stick to the open source as much as possible.
Right. Yeah. We all have a very similar point B, and it's just a matter of how do we get from the point A's each of us are at.
Right.
I will say, just one kind of thought we've had bubble up recently is, looking at the feasibility of getting rid of these, we call them digital landlords, right? It is very much a business problem, right? For example, something like, going back to a driver's co-op, right? Like that's a B2C product. You need a critical mass of users. I very much believe it can succeed, right? Like I think they're doing everything right. But it is, tougher than, say, I'll give a different example. And I won't say which industry, but one of the industries we consult in, there is this B2B product that sits right in the middle of their operations. It takes money in and it puts work orders out, right? The construction industry has a program like that, massage therapy, composting, all these industries have programs. And those I feel like are personally a lot more rife for, I'm going to use the word disruption here, but I mean to take them democratic, right? And a lot of the reason they're right is that they're really expensive, these products, right? They're, some of these guys are paying $2,000-$3,000 a month for these things in the middle of their tech stack. You get 10, 15 of those people on board with an alternative that they're going to own, right? Like that's a much easier math problem for me than taking, DoorDash and taking it community owned. Right.
Sure.
Or taking, these larger B2C products. I think they're all worth pushing. And I think, your guess is as good as my guess is as good as anyone, right? Where we're going to find the success. But that's something we've been thinking about a lot recently is,
I think that's really smart because, personally, my take on it from kind of following financial press on Uber specifically, and Lyft is that there isn't actually a feasible business model there. And, the proof is in the pudding. They've burned billions of dollars and, way more than their, bloated executive salaries are accounting for. So, I'm very skeptical of that, the B2C models, but that what you were talking about with the more bespoke software that's specifically tailored to an industry that's like, you're not going to be selling this to everybody. Everybody's not going to be putting this app on their iPhone, but everybody in this industry is going to adopt your software because, you're charging $100 a month for a support service instead of $3,000 or whatever, or you're, giving the software away for free and offering a la carte services or whatever.
That's exactly it, right? Especially with that, the industry specific thing is really important too, because I think like you had used I don't know if you said QuickBooks, but bookkeeping as an example. That is one I'm really excited for, the open source alternatives like the one you mentioned. But I think that, for looking at it from our team, like it would be tough for us to build that because of just how many features, right? The more industries you support, you need to support 100 different payment models. You need to support, 10 different types of accounting theories, right? Whereas if you just look at, one very narrow industry, massage therapy, for example, right? Kind of 95% of that work is very, very similar to each other, right? And so you might be able to get by with 5 or 6 core features instead of 100, right? And
I definitely I do think people underestimate the difficulty of recreating some of the, the corporate apps and corporate, software, proprietary software. Because, it's one of the problems that we've had in trying to adopt some open source stuff in our own organization is that things, they need to be basically a clone of what everybody uses, which is why LibreOffice, I think, is a good one, because I haven't used Microsoft Word in so long, I wouldn't even know, I guess, at this point. But I remember it being like, oh, this is exactly the same as what I'm used to, is exactly the same as Word. Everything's in the same place. It's just open source. And so when you get programs that aren't as feature rich or just work in a different way, I think that's, that can be a big turnoff. And then, QuickBooks has been I feel like that is a real thorn in the side of a lot of businesses, because it seems like you kind of have to get it, but they also want you to be online most of the time, right? I think they charge a bunch more for the self-hosted or whatever, just have it on your computer. Like we used to have everything, like some of us still do.
QuickBooks and Squarespace and Wix, I think, are the ones that the website programs and the accounting software are the ones that every business uses it. Not every, but you know what I mean? Most of the clients we've ever consulted for use both of those. And it's, we're taking on the website side of it as a thing, because we kind of saw, that as a solvable problem in 2025. But I'm very excited for when we can, crack QuickBooks, crack, all of these other sort of horizontals that sit in the middle of, everyone's businesses.
Yeah, it'd be good to get that. Because we definitely, we're feeling the results of our legacy tech decisions from way back in the day when we decided that Drupal was the way to go for our website. Because it was open source and it was very powerful, and at the time, I think there used to be more Drupal developers than there are now, maybe. But it's kind of, we made that decision for some, good reasons, and whatever, it aligned with our values. But now, sometimes we look back on it maybe we should have just gone with something a little more mainstream, or a little easier. We are where we're at. But anyway, if you want to get some Drupal developers, they're definitely, I know there are some of us with Drupal sites out there that are hard up for help.
Actually, one of the four other co-ops that I mentioned, Polycot, they are wonderful Drupal developers. I'll give them a plug here as well. Yeah, they do. That is, though, kind of a more niche skill set. But I will say, there were a lot more worse decisions you could have made in terms of being vendor locked or having specialists. A lot of stuff that was really popular 10 years ago is just costing companies just bleeding money now. Whereas, Drupal and PHP are still, extremely relevant, modern technologies, and open source obviously protects you from a lot of the stuff. So,
Great. Well, it's been wonderful talking, Andy. Best of luck with all your stuff at Comp.coop and with Co-op Cincy. And if there's ever anything you want to talk about in the future, or some other people that you're working with there, or that would like to talk about their co-op, make sure to send them our way for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, this has been great. It's been so nice meeting you.
Yeah. All right. Well, we will call it an interview, and we will like and subscribe, leave a comment, ask Andy a question in the comments, and I'll make sure he gets it. All right.